Manny here once again. Welcome to DFS Zone, your source for daily fantasy sport lineup advice for the NFL and the NBA. Got another video for you guys. We're going to discuss Week 8 of the NFL, the receivers position. But before I get started with the video, like always, I appreciate you guys drop a like. And if you're new to the channel and you have not as of yet joined us here at DFS Zone as a community, the only thing you have to do is definitely subscribe to the channel, put on your post notifications, that bell icon, turn it on. This way you don't miss out on any of my NFL or NBA lineup advice videos. All right, so Week 8, we're going to discuss the wide receivers in this video. And right away, I mean, there's a number of guys. Antonio Brown is definitely someone that I'm going to have a little exposure to. Good matchup, playing at home. You know, Big Ben plays very well at home. Cleveland and Pittsburgh had a nice, good, interesting first game of the season, going to the wire into overtime. Ended up being a tie. I expect this game to be another fairly close one, but Pittsburgh at home is definitely pretty tough. I can see Antonio Brown definitely making a difference in this game. I'm gonna have some exposure to him, but I really don't want to give every single player that I have an interest on in this actual slate. I think Antonio Brown is definitely someone you should consider. I'm going to come down and go to A.J. Green simply because I do have Andy Dalton as one of my quarterbacks, and you definitely want to have some sort of correlation or some sort of team stack with one of his players. I do like Tyler Boyd. I may sprinkle Tyler Boyd in some of my lineups other than A.J. Green. I may even pair them up with Dalton, but in this particular video, I would say A.J. Green is probably in the best possible spot here. I mean, he's 8,800 here. He's 8,000 on DK. He's averaging 15.6 fantasy points per game, 87.3 yards per game, and 5 touchdowns. This is the only thing that's really the stinker here with AJ Green. Just not enough touchdowns this year, and he hasn't had enough in the last 3 weeks. But I think this week is the week. They're going up against Tampa, so I really like the opportunity and the chances of him getting in the end zone this week. As you can see, I really like the factors that he's been targeted like a whole bunch over the last 3 weeks. You can see here he has had 36 targets. He's had 20 receptions, 314 yards. He has had 2 100-yard receiving games here. The only big just disappointment is just he hasn't gotten in the end zone. 15, 12, and 14. He's been pretty steady there. His price is a little high. I guess they do anticipate the factors that he is playing against Tampa Bay. So Fanduel and Draftkings know what they're doing. All right. But 15.7 yards per catch during the course of those last 3 games. The only thing, again, is just that he needs to get in the end zone. I think this week he has an opportunity to do so because they're going up against Tampa Bay, who is dead last in pass defense this year, giving up 328 yards per game to the opposition with 8.8 yards per catch. 18 TDs is the most in the NFL. This is the best opportunity Cincinnati can get here. At home, big game. They need to get a win. They need to get Dalton and A.J. Green on the right page here, and this is the great opportunity. Also, Tampa Bay 32nd in the NFL as far as giving up receiving yards per game to actual wide receivers. Dead last, 341.7 yards per game there. Obviously, all 18 TDs have gone to receivers. In the red zone, the opportunities, they just allowing teams to get in the red zone, and they are actually converting at an 85% clip. 3.5 opportunities per game, the opposition in the red zone against Tampa Bay, 3 TDs per game, pretty much coughed up. So an opportunity here. Cincinnati has not been putting up a lot of touchdowns as of late. This is an opportunity for them to move downfield. Definitely use Joe Mixon, get between the tackles, start moving the offense downfield, get first downs, put yourself in a position where you can hit Tyler Boyd and A.J. Green to be able to get in the end zone, in the red zone, get in the red zone, and get in the end zone. It's very important. Other than that, Cincinnati's red zone offense coming in is pretty darn good. They have had 3 opportunities per game. They are converting at a 72% clip and 2 touchdowns in 1 field during the course of those 3 opportunities. So they have taken advantage of the opportunities in the end zone, in the red zone. So we need to do that as well. Get downfield. This is a team that coughs up quite a bit of red zone opportunities in Tampa Bay. They give up tons of yardage. They've given up tons of touchdowns. This is just a great matchup for Dalton and A.J. Green to really have a big game because they both need it, and Cincinnati as a team needs it. Next guy that I'm considering in this slate, and again, a lot of these guys, I love Devontae Adams here. I'm not going to talk about him, but I definitely love the matchup. He's been getting targeted a ton with Mr. Aaron Rodgers. Look at this in the last 3 weeks, man. 26, 36, 42 targets. Now, granted, not a whole, the completion percentage is not quite as good, but 42 targets is a lot. You cannot pass up an opportunity to have a player like this. And then the whole thing here, Green Bay going into Los Angeles to play the Rams. I could see Green Bay falling behind and Aaron Rodgers definitely needing to pass the ball a little bit more regularly, and it's going to open up the doors for more Devontae Adams, and especially that Randall Cobb is still hurt. So he's going to be the main target. Definitely love this matchup for Devontae Adams. I am going to definitely have some exposure to him for sure. But I'm going to come down a little bit in price. I'm going to target someone here that I don't think most people are going to talk about because they're going to be playing in someone else's field. And Emmanuel Sanders has been really, really good the last 2 weeks, possibly 3 weeks. Look at his numbers over the last few weeks. 2 straight 100-yard games, right? 17 targets, as you can see there, 10 and 7, and he's had 13 receptions. That's 217 yards and 2 touchdowns. And look at the fantasy points, 24 and 21, pretty much about 22.5 fantasy points. That's way above his average of 16.8. He's averaging 86 yards a game, and he's actually surpassed that in the last 2 games. So the last 2 games, he's been getting it really, really going with Case Keenum. I love this matchup, man. 24 and 21 fantasy points over the last 2 games. That's above his average. He's in those 217 yards. That breaks down to 16.6 yards per catch in those 13 receptions for the 217 yards. Pretty darn impressive, man. In the red zone, he's had 6 targets, 4 receptions, 34 yards. No touchdowns, but 67% completion percentage there. I mean, again, this situation here, I just love the factors that they more than likely going to fall behind, and they're going to have to play catch up to Kansas City. I just don't see them staying with Kansas City, but I can see them falling behind, trailing, and have no choice but to pass. And that's going to open up the doors for, hopefully, Emmanuel Sanders to have even more targets, more receptions, more yardage, and maybe possibly a few touchdowns in the end zone. So I love Sanders here. It's definitely going off course here because you're playing in Kansas City. But Kansas City has really been having trouble holding down pretty good receivers. 31st in pass defense this year, allowing 317 yards per game, 7.7 yards per catch. And we have a gentleman here in Sanders that over the last 2 weeks, he has had 13 receptions for 16.6 yards per catch. So if he can just stay hot, him and Keenum can keep it going. This could be a very, very explosive and very sneaky play here with Emmanuel Sanders. As far as fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, Kansas City 39.6 DK and 30.9 fantasy points on FanDuel. That is a lot of fantasy points. So it is definitely a lot of opportunity here for Mr. Sanders to do well against this team. Now, granted, they did play about 4 weeks ago, as you can see here, and he only had 7 targets for 5 receptions and 45 yards. Didn't have a touchdown at all. It's probably one of his lowest game production of the year, and that happened to be at home. Now they got to go into Kansas City. But again, like I said, I like this. I like the opportunity. I also like the factors that they really have been connecting him and Case Keenum the last 2 weeks. I like the factors that he's also put himself in the red zone twice. In the end zone twice. I definitely feel that this is an opportunity that you cannot pass up at 7,200 for Emmanuel Sanders. I can see him getting 10 to maybe 12, 13 targets and hopefully about 8 or 9 receptions for more than 100 yards again, and hopefully another touchdown, maybe even 2. So Emmanuel Sanders is in play for me. I think he's my second receiver. My third and final receiver, definitely got to pair him up, of course, with one of my other quarterbacks, and that's Jarvis Landry. 6,700 here, 7,200, a little more expensive, about $400 or $500 more on DK. But Landry's another one. He just gets a ton. He's been getting a lot of targets by Baker Mayfield, and it's just a matter of time. Last week was a very good game. The perfect example here for Cincinnati with Tampa Bay. Look at Jarvis Landry last week with 15 targets, caught 10 receptions for 97 yards. His last 3 games, he has had 36 targets. Granted, only 17 or 18 receptions, but still 36 targets. You can't pass that up at 6,700. 20.7 fantasy points last week. That was his best week of the year. When he played against the Pittsburgh Steelers, earlier in the year, he had targeted 15 times for 7 receptions and 106 yards with Tyrod Taylor. I can see him, as you can see, because the opportunities there playing against Pittsburgh, he already had a pretty good solid game against them. And now the last couple of weeks, him and Baker trying to find it. They had a dud game here against the Chargers. Not a good game at all. Only had 2 receptions for 11 yards, but he did get targeted 10 times. And overall, over the course of the last 5 weeks, he's had 10 targets or more per game. He just needs to convert more with that catch percentage. So he's got to nail down those receptions and get those yardage and get in the end zone a little more. Only 2 touchdowns for Jarvis Landry. It is pretty low. And actually, the receptions total, I think, is actually lower. He was the leading receiver last year as far as receptions for the year. I think he had about 107 or something like that, 108 for the year, which was the highest in the NFL. I don't think he's even near that. I don't think he's at that pace this year as well than he was last year. But he has a great opportunity here, man. Pittsburgh hands down a lot of yardage as well. They're 16th in pass defense this year thus far, 282 yards per game, 7.4 yards per catch given up in those receptions, 15 TDs, which is the 5th most in the NFL. So they give up a ton of touchdowns. As far as receiving yards to receivers, the receivers, they are ranked 27th, Pittsburgh. And as far as receivers putting up a lot of yards on them, 305 yards per game receivers have. And, of course, all 15 touchdowns have been to receivers. The receivers are averaging 12 yards per catch. So when you look at the 282 yards per game, that's combining receiving play with tight end, with the running backs, and everything else. But when you're looking at just the receivers, 305 yards per game pretty much given up to receivers. As far as fantasy points, the 4th most in the NFL thus far against wide receivers this year, Pittsburgh, 47.1 DK and 37.7 Fanduel points. So, I mean, there's a lot of points for the taking here between Mr. Jarvis, Landry, and Baker Mayfield as I teamed them up this week. All right, red zone opportunities. 60% of the time the opponents get in the red zone on the Steelers. 3.5 times per game, they're coming away with at least 2 touchdowns. Cleveland offensively in the red zone have struggled, only about 55% conversion ratio. They get in the red zone about 3 times per game and only converting with 1 touchdown and 1 field goal game. They're going to have an opportunity here because, as you see, Pittsburgh coughs up about 3.5 opportunities in the red zone. So they just need to convert a little bit more. They don't have Carlos Hyde anymore, who was pretty much their red zone guy. But I can see where they'll probably attack Pittsburgh in this capacity as far as their receivers are concerned, because the weakness for the Steelers is more so with the pass game as it is with the running game. So I definitely like Jarvis Landry here, and that's pretty much it. Those are my 3 receivers that I think. There's a lot of guys, and anything can change. It's Friday today. Anything can change from here to Sunday. I do like a number of other guys that I play. I mean, granted, I'm just giving you a couple plays. This is not a player pool, that I'm offering you. There is a number of players that I do like this week. And like I said, I love Devontae Adams. A.J. Green is in play for me. Going to have some exposure to him. I definitely like Emmanuel Sanders, which I discussed. Tyler Boyd is going to have some sort of, exposure from me as well. I do like Landry, as you can see here as well. And it's just a number of them. Deshaun Jackson is always explosive for Tampa Bay. He's definitely in a favorable position with Cincinnati as well. There's a couple of nice plays here. But that's pretty much it, guys, man. I hope you liked the video. Drop a like if you like. If you're new to the channel, like I've said every time, all the other times, if you're new to the channel, hey, you want to be able to get this information on a regular basis for the NFL, and I also do NBA. Make sure that you subscribe down below. Join the DFS Zone community by just subscribing. Put it on your bell icon on, so this way you don't miss out on any of those NFL or even NBA videos. And with that, that's basically it, and I'll see you guys the next time.